Hi, I'm Jackie Baker. I am a research fellow at the Asia Research Centre and a lecturer in Southeast Asian politics at Murdoch University. Here I study all things to do with policing and law and criminal justice issues. So the politics, one might say, of law and policing.
Great. Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Milne. I'm a senior lecturer at the Crawford School of Public Policy, which is in the College of Asia and the Pacific at the Australian National University. And I work on issues around environment and development in Southeast Asia, particularly from a social sciences perspective. And some might call it political ecology. And we're going to tell you a little bit about our research collaboration.
Yes.
Okay, so our project is called The Politics of Anti-Corruption Reforms in Southeast Asia. And Jackie and I ended up working on issues around corruption many years ago, back in 2013. And for me, I came to the subject because I had been working on conservation areas, particularly forest conservation in Cambodia. And I was constantly witnessing issues with illegal logging. And so I got talking with Jackie, who was at the time really an expert in corruption in Indonesia, and we began to share ideas.
Oh, sorry. And me, corruption, I came to corruption as well. Sorry, I'm just smiling particularly. I came to corruption because, the John Monash Award enabled me to do my PhD. And as part of that PhD, I was trying to study policing in Indonesia. But every time I tried to study police, I just came to illicit monetary flows. So I ended up, probably much like Sarah, studying more about corruption than studying my topic of policing. And this got us onto this common issue around corruption and anti-corruption in the region.
So for scholars, it turns out that studying corruption is pretty clunky. The metrics aren't very good, the definitions are pretty contested, but basically it refers to abuses of power, especially public entrusted power for private gain. Would you agree with that, Jackie?
Well, yes, and corruption has numerous purposes in Southeast Asia. I mean, as we talked about in our respective work, corruption was about bringing together certain groups of people, factions of people that could work together. It was about funding certain kinds of opportunities. So we found that corruption really underpinned how things worked in the region. And we felt that both of us brought a really grounded fieldwork-based approach to the study of corruption, very different from the kinds of approaches that we see by Transparency International, for instance.
Yeah, so this is a Transparency International image which shows the Corruption Perceptions Index, which is a really sort of globally accepted measure of corruption. And really at surface value, you can at least see that Southeast Asia, the region where both of us work, is really embedded in corruption. There's a bit of a problem going on here. So let's talk more about that now.
So as Monash scholars, Sarah and I got talking about our individual projects, and we realised that there was a new research agenda to open up here. And that progressed a series of workshops and a special issue that we ultimately called Dirty Money States. And in this special issue, we argued that states in Southeast Asia were fundamentally dependent on corrupt monies, and that they did the work of governance. So both did they bring together political groups to work together, but also they funded ordinary services and state work. So we in this paper sort of brought the idea that states were very fundamentally dependent on illicit revenues in order to provide services.
Absolutely. So it calls us into question, what is the logic of a state? And Southeast Asia is really a place to explore that. So after the special issue, Jackie and I were approached by U4, which is an anti-corruption think tank. And they commissioned a study about anti-corruption reforms in Cambodia to review the experiences in Cambodia. And Cambodia is an interesting case because there's a heavy presence and a heavy circulation of illicit finance, particularly coming from revenues that derive from illegal logging and land grabbing, natural resources in general. And we see that the ruling party is quite heavily dependent upon this. Yet, on the other hand, Cambodia has also embraced international reforms and is celebrated as a success story in the implementation of anti-corruption reforms. So we began to see a paradox emerging here when you look at the last decade of experience in Cambodia. On the one hand, it seems to be doing quite well in mainstream governance reforms. On the other hand, you have a ruling party that is increasingly authoritarian in nature, and we don't see any sort of real changes on the ground. So this is the puzzle that we're going to explore for our current project. And the question that we're asking is sort of, how is it that best practice anti-corruption reforms go wrong? And we want to bring some empirical richness to the equation.
So this Monash grant enables us to unpack some of these anti-corruption reforms that have occurred in Cambodia that we theorised in the earlier paper, and to really take a grounded approach to looking at, well, what kinds of reforms are going forward? How is it that the state can still depend so heavily on illicit financial flows, but at the same time be this kind of poster child of anti-corruption? And what we think is going on here is that certain anti-corruption reforms benefit certain groups of people within the ruling regime. So we're going to look at who benefits really from these anti-corruption reforms and how do they get implemented.
Yeah, and so hopefully that enables us to paint a picture more broadly about what's going on in Southeast Asia. And we look forward to sharing the results with you soon.